Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please hit the subscribe. Now this start video. The One Chicago franchise, known for its interconnected stories across multiple spin-offs, captivated audiences once again with its latest crossover event, In the Trenches, which aired on January 29, 2025. This three-part crossover spanned Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, and Chicago PD, and it was a thrilling, heart-pounding story that showcased the relentless dedication of Chicago's first responders. The event brought together the heroic teams from Firehouse 51, the medical staff at Chicago Med, and the police force at Chicago PD, as they all banded together to investigate a deadly explosion that had devastating consequences for the city. Here's a detailed recap of each episode. The crossover event began with the Chicago Fire episode, In the Trenches Part 1, which aired as part of Season 13, Episode 11. The story kicks off when Firehouse 51 is called to the scene of a massive explosion at a warehouse on Chicago's South Side. What initially seems like an industrial accident quickly turns into something much more sinister when traces of sabotage are discovered. Chief Wallace Bowden, Eamon Walker, leads the team through the chaotic and dangerous wreckage, coordinating efforts to rescue anyone trapped inside the building and tending to the injured. As firefighters Kelly Severide, Taylor Kinney, and Stella Kidd, Miranda Raymayo, work to investigate the cause of the explosion, they discover chemical residue at the scene that suggests the blast was no accident. It's clear now that this explosion is the result of intentional sabotage, but the team doesn't yet know who is behind it or why it happened. Meanwhile, paramedics Sylvie Brett, Kara Kilmer, and Violet Mikami, Hanako Greensmith, provide crucial medical care to victims caught in the blast. They treat the wounded on-site, offering both medical attention and emotional support to those suffering from trauma. The emotional weight of the situation hits home when they encounter a family desperately searching for a missing loved one. This personal connection to the tragedy serves as a reminder of the stakes of their work. As the episode draws to a close, Chief Bowden warned his team that the explosion could be part of something much larger, a hint that the investigation is far from over. The team is left with more questions than answers, setting the stage for the next chapter in this harrowing story. The action shifts to Chicago Med, In the Trenches Part 2, Season 10, Episode 11. In this installment, the emergency department of Chicago Med is overwhelmed with victims from the warehouse explosion. The doctors and nurses must navigate a flood of casualties, ranging from severe burns to those suffering from toxic inhalation due to the explosion. Dr. Will Halstead, Nick Gelfus, and Dr. Natalie Manning, Tori DeVito, work tirelessly to save the most critically injured patients, including one firefighter who was hurt during the rescue operations at the scene of the blast. The hospital staff faces an overwhelming challenge as they struggle to treat victims with varying degrees of injuries, while nurse Maggie Lockwood, Marline Barrett, works to manage the chaos in the ER. The medical staff's efforts are further complicated when Dr. Ethan Choi, Brian T., and Dr. Crockett Marcel, Dominic Rains, discover a mysterious toxin in some of the injured patients' bloodstreams. As they analyze the chemical composition, it becomes clear that the toxin is not just the result of the explosion. It's a potentially deadly bioterrorism agent. Sharon Goodwin, S. Epatha Merkerson, the hospital's administrator, is briefed on the findings and learns that the toxin might be part of a much larger plot. This revelation sends shockwaves through the medical team, who realize that they may be dealing with an orchestrated terrorist attack. With time running out, the medical team reaches out to the Chicago PD to continue the investigation and try to prevent further harm. As the second part of the crossover ends, the threat of bioterrorism hangs heavy, leaving everyone involved in the case more determined than ever to uncover the truth and stop any further attacks. The final leg of the crossover takes viewers to Chicago PD, where the intelligence unit takes center stage in the Trenches Part 3, Season 12, Episode 11. Sergeant Hank Voigt, Jason Begg, and his team begin their investigation into the explosion, using the evidence from Firehouse 51 and Chicago Med to piece together the puzzle. Detectives Jay Halstead, Jess Lee Soffer, and Haley Upton, Tracy Spiridakos, take the lead in tracking down the domestic terror group responsible for orchestrating the attack. As they follow a trail of clues, they uncover a cache of explosives and chemicals in an abandoned warehouse, confirming their worst fears. The group plans to launch another attack in the near future. The intelligence unit also receives critical help from Officer Kevin Atwater, LaRoyce Hawkins, whose deep community connections provide them with valuable intelligence about the terrorist cell. With a growing sense of urgency, the team devises a high-stakes plan to intercept the group before they can carry out their next attack. In a tense and thrilling final act, the intelligence unit storm the suspect's hideout. Officers risk their lives to neutralize the threat, and though the operation is ultimately successful, one of the team members sustains injuries during the confrontation. The group is apprehended, but the investigation uncovers a more troubling truth. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and the terror group has ties to a larger network that may still pose a significant danger to the city. The episode concludes with a somber reflection as the members of the intelligence unit, Chicago Fire, and Chicago Med process the emotional toll of the events. While the immediate threat has been neutralized, the investigation into the terror network is far from over. As the crossover event wraps up, the final scene brings together key members from all three teams: Chief Bowden, Voight, and Goodwin. In a moment of solidarity, the characters share stories and offer each other support as they process the trauma and emotional weight of what they've just been through. Despite the successful resolution of the attack, they recognize that the world they live in is full of unseen dangers, and their vigilance will be critical in preventing future tragedies. The conversation ends with a sense of mutual respect and camaraderie, as each team returns to their respective duties, knowing that they will be ready for whatever comes next. The crossover event concludes with a cliffhanger that hints at the ongoing threats posed by the terror group, leaving fans eagerly anticipating the next chapter in the One Chicago universe. The success of the In the Trenches crossover event also showcased the deep connections between the characters and the cities they serve. Each episode not only focused on the immediate crisis at hand, but also highlighted the resilience and camaraderie that exists within these first responder teams. Whether it was Firehouse 51 rushing to save lives, Chicago Med staff battling to keep the ER from being overwhelmed, or Chicago PD's intelligence unit chasing down leads to stop further attacks, the crossover exemplified the unwavering dedication of these everyday heroes. What made this crossover particularly captivating was its seamless integration of both personal and professional stakes. While the urgency of stopping a terrorist plot was the primary focus, the emotional impact on each team member added depth to the storylines. From Kelly Severide and Stella Kidd grappling with the weight of the sabotage to Dr. Ethan Choi and Dr. Crockett Marcel unearthing a dangerous toxin, viewers saw the toll this crisis took on everyone involved. The chemistry between the characters was especially evident during moments of cooperation across the shows. From the quiet understanding between Bowden, Voight, and Goodwin to the quick, effective teamwork between paramedics, doctors, and officers, the crossover was a beautiful reminder of how interconnected their roles are in ensuring the safety of Chicago. Looking ahead, the crossover left lingering questions that are bound to keep fans on edge. Who else is involved in the domestic terror network? How will the first responders continue to face future threats? With the city of Chicago still at risk, the stage is set for more action-packed and emotionally charged episodes in the One Chicago franchise. The In the Trenches crossover event was a masterclass in blending the distinct tones and storylines of the One Chicago franchise into a compelling, interconnected narrative. From the firefighters and paramedics of Chicago Fire to the doctors and nurses of Chicago Med, and finally, the detectives of Chicago PD, the event brought these characters together in a unified front against a deadly and complex threat. With thrilling action sequences, high-stakes drama, and powerful emotional moments, the crossover highlighted the best qualities of each series while setting up future storylines that will surely keep fans hooked. As each team continues their work, there are more challenges on the horizon, and the heroes of One Chicago will undoubtedly be there to meet them head-on.